always recommend running an up-to-date version of Google Chrome when using Blackboard and Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Thank you very much for joining us for our fifth and final episode of this season. It has been a lot of fun putting these together and having all these discussions with different folks from around the campus. Today, we're pleased to announce Dr. Arja Vainio-Mattila, who will be joining us. She's the Provost and Vice-President of Nipissing University. And we really just get some very great insight on her ideas of the future and what type of opportunities this current pandemic has allowed us to explore.
Following our interview with Arja, we will look a little bit about different question types in Blackboard when you're making a test using that canvas. And then we also look at Blackboard Collaborate Ultra and how to take attendance, how to see when your students are connecting and that sort of thing. So thanks a lot for joining us. Again, we had a great season and we're looking forward to the next one. We'll see you in September. Until then, make sure to like and subscribe to our videos and we hope you enjoy.
Thanks. Welcome to episode number 5, and thank you for joining us today. We just wanted to do a quick recap of this season and people that we've spoken to and what we touched on. And I wanted to allude to our first episode where we spoke to Pat Mahar, the Dean of Teaching, about strategies and best practices for teaching in an online learning environment versus a face-to-face course delivery. Then we speak to Denise LaFrance Horning about from the experiential learning chair, about ways to incorporate experiential learning into the online environment as well.
In our next episode, we spoke to Leanne Party, the Associate Registrar of Scheduling and Registration, about asynchronous courses and what that means for students and the benefits that they'll see this coming semester. As well, we talked about some online exams and some details that they might experience. Then we spoke to Kinder McMillan. She's the placement officer and part-time faculty in criminal justice program. We talked about a community hub that they're using to build community with students, staff, and faculty in their program in replace of the face-to-face experience that they've had. As well, we spoke to Kinder about some tips from her experiences teaching criminal justice program online and how to get students engaging with each other as well as the course content.
Now that leads us into today's final episode of the season. We're very happy to welcome Dr. Arja Vainio-Mattila, Provost and Vice-President at Nipissing University. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, we hope so. We first wanted to just ask, to get into things right away, basically, we wanted to ask your perspective on what these changing times have brought for folks and what kind of opportunities that you see coming out of all of this in the end.
Well, this has been a very interesting time, and it's I know people at Nipissing, both staff and faculty, and then of course students, have had to to use that phrase that we hear 60 million times a day, pivot very quickly in all kinds of ways. Adopt new ways of doing things. And so I've been, thinking a lot about online learning as a sort of a general concept and how it has evolved. Really over almost 200 years. I think I found out that the first correspondence course was offered about 170 years ago, and so the idea that an instructor sent out learning materials and the students sent back assignments that they had completed was kind of the beginning of this whole idea of teaching students that are not in your presence. And over time, we've learned different things about that. The phrase distance learning that was used for decades and decades as a way of describing this has sort of gone out the window as we've realized that more and more of those distance learners actually are students who live on campus in the residencies, that students choose to do online courses often because of other things that are happening in their lives. And of course, now we are in this situation where really nobody is making the choice. The choice is kind of bestowed upon us, and we've all had to deal with that in all kinds of ways. So when I think about the future of this online endeavor, again, there are not many things that we know for sure. I keep thinking about something that somebody said recently, that all those people who were asked in interviews 5 years ago where they see themselves in 5 years' time were all wrong, and that's quite possibly true as we look into the future as well and try and predict what's happening. But there are some things that I think we can say with some confidence. I think we know that the impact of this pandemic context in particular has been traumatic to both many students and to many faculty. To have such a huge change in how you do the thing that takes up most of your day, whether it's the teaching or the learning, cannot do anything but have a significant impact on people. We know also that just like in the pandemic context, to offer education online has made a lot of sense for us as an institution and for higher education institutions in general, given the public health guidelines and all those kinds of things. We also know that there will always be students for whom online education makes more sense given their own contexts. And that has always been the case, and their life circumstances that are in place dictate that. And in some ways, I've also seen articles that can argue that, in fact, maybe in the future more so as the work we do becomes also more sort of shifting between online and on-site environments, working from home, working from office, that the learning systems also kind of have to mirror that, because if you have a job, like many of our students do, they are likely doing the same in their work environment. I think also that we know that as frustrating as the pandemic context has been for everybody who've had their normal way of doing things so brutally disrupted, this is likely the most opportune time for us to consider what universities in general and what Nipissing in particular might become in the post-pandemic era. So this disruption at this scale gives us an opportunity to maybe engage in a conversation about not only what happens in the fall, but what will happen when the sort of the emergency period of all of this is over. We also know that this is very unlikely to be the only disruption of this kind in the near future, and that as a result, I think probably all of our ilk and universities and others in the learning environment are thinking about how to become the kind of place where the shift between online and on-site is fairly seamless and can happen fast into either direction, so that when you close things down because of a pandemic, you don't need to be closed down maybe for so long, because the plan on how you get people back into on-site is actually already in place, and we know what those steps will be, and vice versa as well. And then I think we should also remember and remind ourselves that on-site and online are both delivery mechanisms they both create unique learning environments, but they are not the learning outcomes. The goal is not to offer something online or on-site. The learning outcomes of the programs are something different, and learning outcomes can be taught. You can teach to those learning outcomes in many different ways, and it is possible to do so both in the on-site and in the online environments. So I think, what I would also say is that what we are doing in the fall does not represent the new normal for Nipissing. It is still very much a response to the pandemic, but what I would love to have as a part of the new normal is a discussion about the longer-term future, and I think this is an interesting time for universities globally, and I'm intrigued by ideas that I seem to be emerging in different places and in other parts of the world, and I'd really love to engage in a very broad conversation with faculty and staff and students about those possibilities for Nipissing.
an analogy, for faculty, it's kind of like normally in regular times doing online instead of face to face has been kind of dipping their toes in the pool kind of deal, and COVID's kind of pushed them up to that the first level diving board, and they got pushed off that way. So afterwards, we're hoping, and I mean, I think all of us are hoping that they realize that it wasn't that bad and it wasn't as scary as that first time jumping off the diving board. That online is a great delivery method. And
absolutely.
And I appreciate what you said about the learning outcomes as well. I think even people who may not prefer to learn online or to take online classes, I think now sort of think that being forced into it might help them realize that it isn't about the delivery necessarily. Some people it is, don't get me wrong. I'm a visual learner and I prefer to be hands-on with certain things, but maybe it'll introduce people to the online world and make them appreciate what's there instead of being maybe hesitant to jump right into as well. So
yeah, I like Rob's analogy. I always think of the fact that I, like many other people, prefer to read a book in a in the kind of a format where I can smell the book basically and touch it and turn the pages. But the fact is that when I travel a lot, I used to when I would travel for 2 weeks, for example, I would carry with me somewhere around 5 to 10 books with me, because that's what I would need to take me through that 2-week period. And now, of course, I access those books on through my electronic reader, because why would I carry 10 books with me in a suitcase around the world when I can read them on my iPad? It's not my preferred way of reading, but it's a perfectly good way of reading. And so I think that there's all kinds of things that come into play, and of course we become more and more familiar with the technology that is around us, and it helps us serve, us in all kinds of different ways. So it just, I mean, this is not in any way a definitive list of everything that you can possibly do, but just in the last week or so, the kinds of ideas that I've seen colleagues talk about in both in Canada but also elsewhere are things like the disruption of the connection between the courses and the academic calendar, for example. So online learning perhaps makes it easier to think about courses that are more intensive in different lengths, maybe modules, and creating more student choice in their engagements with the course. So we have a very strict structure of 3-credit courses, sometimes 6 credits, but usually 3 credits. And the student, if they are taking a 3-credit course, they have to complete every part of that course. Whereas I see now examples where you can register in a course and you can you listen to all of the lectures, and you get maybe 1 credit. And if you also decide to do the assignments, you will get an additional credit. Or if you so different kinds of choices in terms of how you engage with the material. You combine some content with another course, or outside the university kind of experiential learning opportunities. So you get a different kinds of credits. So that the credits aren't only 1, 3, or 6, but maybe for 1 engagement your credit is 1.75. I mean, these are just numbers for us. So the other thing is the adherence we have to the idea of 3 hours a week, 12 weeks. So that is the perfect way of delivering learning in undergraduate courses. It's like maybe it's not the perfect way for all courses, and maybe your different types of combinations could emerge. I'm seeing more and more in the USA in particular, universities moving towards individualized academic programs. Students coming in saying, I really want to study, I don't know, climate change, and so I'd like to pick these courses from from biology and geography and history and sociology and combine them into a program on that fits my interests. And we all know that the best indicator of success in universities is to study something that is actually an inherent interest of a student. So there's some interesting opportunities there, and especially maybe in the realm of electives, how electives are managed. We already know that even for our students in the fall, students that have been previously very bound by their academic schedules are now have more opportunity to take courses from disciplines that they have never been able to take them before because the schedules just do not meet. And so we know that there's more choice in this area. Ladder degrees have been with us in sort of global discourse for a very long time, but I think the understanding that students' learning gets disrupted for many reasons is becoming stronger. So we know that students' learning gets disrupted by family and sort of social context, but also because of the integration of their learning with their work outside the university, and then things like pandemics come and disrupt. So then the ladder degree is that idea that perhaps you come to university for a year, you do your 1 year sort of amount of credits, you get your certificate. That certificate is part of a diploma that you can earn in 2 years. That diploma is part of a general degree that you can earn in 3 years. And the 3-year degree is part of an honors degree that you can earn in 4 years. But that it may be that you have to take entire years out in between because of other pressures that there are on your life. All kinds of more described pathways and sort of bespoke modules, where some of those modules may actually be created by employers that are connected to the university, especially in our professional school. There might be some opportunities there. So at the moment, we have this idea that we hire, especially in our professional schools, we hire professionals who have experience in the area to come and teach in our classrooms. But what about if those professionals never actually have to leave their practice and the students are more there? So then again, the online kind of tools and platforms would be very useful in that. I'm wondering whether we could at some point in the future at Nipissing get to a point where every degree was also available online. So at any point in your degree, you might come in and your intent is to start on-site as an on-site student, but then something happens, and instead of having to take a long break, if you could continue that degree online and then maybe perhaps come back again when the situation changes, or not come back again, but complete online, maybe that would also have an impact on student retention and keeping them really as part of the Nipissing community. And then I think all of these will lead us into thinking about maybe new ways of supporting both faculty, but also our students. So if people aren't on campus, that means something different for our support. I'm sure it's already made a change to your work as the learning systems technology field has been so involved in helping faculty make this change. But it will also mean something different for students. And then I really, thinking about these different opportunities, and there's many others out there that, all we need to really do is to kind of look around and see what other universities are doing and ask ourselves, what could we, is there a point for us to actually make some of these changes as well? And one of our strengths at Nipissing is that we are such a small university that we still have some nimbleness. We can try out things, and if they don't work, we can go back to what we were doing. But here is an opportunity. And I'm also thinking about this in terms of, who our students are. We all know that the demographics are such that the first year students coming straight from high schools is a diminishing demographic. It's getting smaller and smaller. So many universities have compensated against that by going towards the direction of international students. We also want to have more international students, and I think that we will have more international students. I wouldn't want that to be only in order to have larger numbers of students, but I think we very sincerely students will benefit from having a more diverse student body. But I assume that demographic will again start to grow at some point. But there is a very strong argument out there right now that the fastest growing demographic in the universities will be mature students. And we already have a substantial number of mature students. When you think that our biggest program is the RPN to BSCN nursing program, and those are all students who already have at least one degree behind and often years of work experience. And so that kind of a student and large global disruptive forces like pandemic will only increase the need for re-education, more further education, the kind of education that allows for flexibility when your career changes or your employer changes. And that's something that I think Nipissing is supposed to do very well. But I think we have to be very conscious about it. And then we also have that sort of Nipissing, specialty is also to be a place where we support the learning by groups of people who may not have had the same opportunities in the K-12 system. So students coming from the rural and northern areas, indigenous students, first generation students, and the first year foundations programming that we've started is a good start in really for us to institutionalize the kinds of thinking and support. So these are all thoughts that are sort of at the moment exercising me, and I'm really hoping that that over the next weeks and definitely before the fall, we'll have again in place some sort of NU conversations model where we can engage in a conversation about these ideas and entertain many other ideas that I haven't mentioned here.
Well, that's great. They covered a lot of great ideas, a lot of great thoughts about the future and what the future might hold and might look like. I especially like the point about maybe perhaps one day offering every course online as well as on site. So if people's lives change, as 4 years is a long time to complete a degree, and people's lives can change significantly in that time. And I think that was a really, really interesting point you brought forward, that maybe this what we're going through right now might help us move to something more like that, or to envision something like that in the future, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think that really goes back to that asynchronous model that we're doing for this semester. That it really gives people that opportunity to life happens all the time. That's right. And this allows them to keep up their education regardless of what difficulties or what changes are happening in their lives. It's I think it's amazing that we're going down that road and we're having that conversation. I think it's beautiful.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to explore some of these ideas, and just as a sort of starting point, really.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thanks for being on.
Well, I think that was a great interview and a great way to end off season number 1 of Training Talks. Again, we appreciate your time, and we appreciate your time for joining us. I'm Chris Bird, Learning Systems Technologist. This is my colleague, Rob Boulay. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you again next season.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We had an amazing time. Again, I'm Rob Boulay. Feel free to like and subscribe to our videos below. And if you have any suggestions on guest speakers or topics that you'd like us to cover in the upcoming season in September, please reach out to us and let us know. APSonline@nipissingU.ca. Take care and stay safe out there. One of the questions we get asked often is how to track attendance in Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So to do that, you head on over to your Collaborate Ultra from your menu. In this example, I'm going to look at the course room But the same premise applies regarding how to check the attendance, whether it's the course room or if it's an actual scheduled event. If it was a scheduled event, it would show up down here under the scheduled sessions, and you would do the same thing as I'm about to do, which is click the three dots, go to View Reports, and it'll list all of the sessions that are tied to that event. It'll list the start, the end time, the number of people who attended, and the total duration. From here, you want to click the View Report. And on the screen, it'll show you all of those who participated, how long they were in the class, the number of joins, the first and the last, and really all the relevant information that you need. On some accounts, you'll see the View Join details. And that's for if anyone connected more than once, and you can get the actual details of when they connected, in case you need that information. You can then print, or you can export to a CSV, which you can then import into a spreadsheet. And that's all there is. That's all there is to checking the attendance.
You can build a test in Blackboard using many different question types. And today I wanted to focus on a couple that are maybe lesser known or lesser used. So we can build a multiple answer question. So multiple answer questions allow students to choose more than one answer. You can use this type of question when one or more answers is correct. A great example of this would be in a nursing program. You can certainly ask the type of question where students have to select symptoms associated with a medical condition, and sometimes there can be more than one. So let's hover over Create Question and select Multiple Answer. And today, I'm going to bring in the question and copy it into, or paste it into the question text field. And the question is, which of the following elements are used to form water? So we're going to allow for 4 potential answers. First one being hydrogen, second one being helium, third one being carbon, and the last one being oxygen. Now, as I'm sure you're all familiar, the 2 elements that create water are both hydrogen and oxygen. So when if students select those 2 answers, they get that question correct. You can also provide feedback to the students whether they get the answer correct or incorrect. You can categorize the questions so that when you're building a test out of a pool, you can build them based on categories and keywords. And you can also leave instructor notes at the bottom that only the instructor can see. As you can see here, back in the test canvas, you can see that the question is here and the potential possible answers as well as the correct answers indicated below. Create a different type of question called a jumbled sentence question. Now, jumbled sentence questions require students to select words or phrases from a menu to complete a sentence. Now, the same menu appears for all blanks and can include both correct answers and distractors. So we're going to be using both of those today. You can add a maximum of 100 different potential answers in the menu. And the other nice thing about jumbled sentence questions is that they are graded automatically. So hover over Create Question, select Jumbled Sentence, and we'll go ahead and create our question. I've already got some text here that I'm going to copy and paste into the question text field. And you'll notice that I've added variables, this time being X, Y, and Z. Next, I'm going to select 5 possible answers and enter the potential answers, whether they are the correct answers or distractors, in the boxes below. Next, click Next. Next, you actually select what the correct answers are for each case. So in this case, we have Jupiter, we have Mercury, and we have Venus. And just like the other questions we saw earlier, you can add positive or correct or incorrect response feedback. You can categorize the questions and also include instructor notes. And that's it. You'll now see that question appear at the bottom with all the possible answers as well as the correct answers, how they will be marked by Blackboard. Fill in the blank question. First and foremost, hover over question types and select fill in the blank. And I have a question already created here, so I'm going to copy and paste that into here. And that question is, recently Nipissing celebrated its blank anniversary. Scroll down a little bit further and you have the answers. So this is where you put the possible answers. And so I'm going to put in both of those, and I'm going to change the answer so it doesn't have to be exact. It can just contain those letters. I'm not going to worry about case sensitivity because for the most part this answer is numerical. So I've created this question and I click submit at the bottom and we're done. As you can see, the question has been created and the answers are here. The next one I wanted to touch on is called hotspot question. Now this is used when you want the students to identify a certain spot on an image. So again, I have a question created here. I'm just going to copy and paste that in. So approximately where in Canada is North Bay located? So I'm also going to include a picture, a map of Canada, an untitled map of Canada. So I've loaded that. And so now what I need to do is identify the coordinates of where the answer is going to be. So basically, I'm just going to pick roughly right around here. You drag and drop your mouse, and that's it. So as long as the student clicks within that box there, they will get the answer correct. Now again, you can provide correct or incorrect response feedback for the students, categorize the questions, or leave instructor notes. But there we have it. Now I've created a hotspot question, and I'm 2 questions.
Always recommend running an up-to-date version of Google Chrome when using Blackboard and Blackboard Collaborate Ultra.